Chapter 126 The New World Number 1 On the Conqueror at 1,000-meter altitude, Zora, who had been paying attention to the battle, quickly shouted to the people who were sleeping, playing cards, and eating around him, "Quick, this is the final blow, they are going to decide the winner." After speaking, he stared at the screen, wanting to know who was the final winner. Others quickly stood up from the ground when they heard his shout. The two fought for 5 whole days. They went from being excited at the beginning to boredom to just doing their own thing. Garrett even asked someone to drive down the Conqueror directly. Everyone watched the live broadcast above and held a lively banquet. Finally, after so long, the winner is decided. Everyone stared at the screen, looking forward to who would be the winner. On the unnamed island, Air coughed a few times and slowly got up from the ground. Seeing that Hawkeye had completely collapsed in front of him and could no longer fight back, he excitedly raised his knife and pointed it at the sky. "Ha ha ha ha. Hawkeye Mahawk was defeated by me, and now Lozie is the new world's greatest swordsman." Cough cough cough. After coughing a few times and spitting out a mouthful of blood, Air sat down on the ground. "Damn, I'm exhausted. This is the hardest fight I've ever had since my debut. Although I didn't use the fruit ability, but if you can fight me like this, Hawkeye is definitely capable of rivaling the 4 emperors." With that said, Air used the fruit's ability and began to quickly heal his wounds. After a while, all the wounds on his body were healed. He sat on the ground and waited for a while. But what he expected didn't come. "Hey, system, don't think you can steal my experience because Lozie hasn't called you for so long." "Where's my experience in defeating Hawkeye?" "Spit it out." "Because his skill level is so high now. He hasn't called the system for a long time." But in the past, when he defeated a powerful opponent, the system would jump out and beep. Reminder that experience will be credited. As a result, he finally defeated Hawkeye this time, but the bastard didn't even react. Ding. After system detection. Dracula Mihawk did not have a bounty before becoming Shikai Bukai, and he himself was not a marine general, so the system did not issue experience rewards. FKU. Do you want to listen to what you're talking about? This is Hawkeye, a man with a bounty of more than 3.5 billion in the future. You don't have any experience at all, Lozie. Does this make sense? Come on, I don't want more, just give me 350,000 experience points. Gimao will wipe it out for you. Ding. This does not comply with the system regulations. Please host not to make trouble unreasonably. Oh my god. Please give me a nice word, will you give it to me? Ding. Number. Okay, remember, I'm going to FKU. You're a kid with no asshole. You're going to FKU. I'm going to FKU. Air cursed trash in his mind for more than 10 minutes, and the system finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Ding. 300,000 experience points have been distributed. Hey, little guy, I can't cure you anymore. You are so arrogant. Come out and speak. No matter how much he shouted next, the system never responded. It just silently opened the system panel and signaled him to finish adding things quickly and shut up. Secretly despising the system, Air checked the personal panel. Looking at the experience of more than 750,000 above, I am very satisfied. This is the precious experience gained by members of the Ru, and Saz units who defeated the pirates and marines, as well as by their own hard work in defeating Doflamingo and Hawkeye, as well as defeating Hancock and Garrett in bed. You have to think carefully about how to use it. After thinking for a while, he first brought the vampire fruit and Piao fruit to the SSS level, and then invested all the remaining experience in his body to bring it to the full level. At this point, Air finally ushered in his first district level perfect skill. Nefertari D. Air, sex, male, age (18, 272, personal abilities, physique, Haki, armament Haki SSS, observation Haki SSS, conquerors Haki submitted, skill moves, shave S, moonwalks, tempest kick SS, finger pistol SS, iron body, paper arts, omitted, devil fruit, dragon fruit SSS, thunder fruit SSS, vampire fruit SSS, lion fruit SSS, omitted. Please give me flowers. Experience points, 12,405. Fusionable fruits, 0. Comprehensive evaluation, SSS+, currently the strongest in the world. Ding. It is detected that one of the host's skills has reached the full level, triggering a unique reward that increases the skill tenfold. It is detected that the full level skill is physical constitution, and the physical constitution is being strengthened tenfold. The strengthening is successful. Air didn't even react before he lay down on the ground and twitched as if he was electrocuted. Fortunately, this feeling came and went quickly, and soon Air was up again. Damn it, I'm a thunder fruit user. What the hell is this feeling of being electrocuted? Patting his strong pectoralis major muscles, Air didn't feel that they were strengthened, but he felt that his underwear seemed a bit tight for some reason. Could it be that? Air seemed to know something. He quickly got into a dug hole and took off his pants to take a look. Hey guys, what is this? A cannon? Looking at his little brother who had gained a lot of weight, Air excitedly gave the system a thumbs up. Sure enough, it has to be system dad. It's so powerful. By the way, have my kidneys also been strengthened? I'll go back and see Hancock and the others for a try. But then he thought about it. This is the only tenfold enhancement. Why not just add this one? Although it is great, He is still a little dissatisfied. Forget it, don't be too greedy. This is already pretty good. Thinking about it, Air walked out of the cave. As soon as he came out, he saw the conqueror descending from the sky. He walked up to Hawkeye unhurriedly, put the unconscious opponent on his shoulders, and walked towards that side. As soon as the airship's hatch opened, Hancock ran out anxiously, came to Air's side, and asked worriedly, "Honey, are you okay?" "Don't worry, I'm fine." However, Hawkeye is seriously injured and will probably need to rest for a while. Air put Hawkeye on the ground, looked at the two X-shaped wounds on his chest, and quickly called the doctors to ask them to give Hawkeye emergency treatment immediately. Chapter 127 Yaoshou, Luffy meets Haki. Zora, who had just walked out with Usopp's support, was silent when he saw Hawkeye being carried away on a stretcher. Even Hawkeye was defeated, and my target became a stronger guy. But it doesn't matter, no matter who it is, I will surpass him until I become the world's greatest swordsman and fulfill my promise with Kuina. Usopp looked at Air, who had no wounds on his body, and said in surprise, "What's going on? Where are the wounds on your body?" I saw a lot of them before. After hearing his words, everyone realized that there was indeed no wound on Air's body, as if he was not the one who had just experienced a battle. This Air clenched his fist and knocked on his chest, grinning and saying, "That kind of injury can be healed instantly with my fruit ability. But the 950 we competed with before was pure swordsmanship, so I suppressed it and couldn't use the ability. Can it still be like this? Can that kind of wound be healed with recovery?" "You are too scary," Usopp complained feebly. After watching the battle between the two, he had become somewhat immune to Air's monster recovery power, and he would no longer be as surprised as he was at the beginning. "Hey, Air, are all the people in the Grand Line strong?" Luffy, who had always been very fussy, lowered his head and suddenly asked this question. Air looked at him with a playful look and said, "It's very strong, especially in the second half. The masters there are like Crucian carp crossing the river." "Why, I saw the world's top strength." "Are you scared?" Luffy remained silent, while Usopp, Nami, Zora, and even Sanji, who hadn't joined them yet, all cast worried glances. Luffy suddenly raised his head, grinned, and said happily, "Great. The Grand Line is indeed very powerful. I have decided to go to the Grand Line as soon as possible and challenge powerful opponents until I become the Pirate King." Luffy, Nami and other friends looked at his sunny smile and laughed in relief at the same time. They still think too much. This is Luffy. He doesn't know what harm is. "Oh really? Then you should work hard. It will be very difficult to become the Pirate King. My father-in-law Kaido and mother-in-law Charlotte Linlin are your biggest obstacles to becoming a pirate. It is impossible to defeat them with your current strength." Garrett and Fanny both nodded in agreement. In their opinion, their mother and grandfather were the strongest after their husband and father. "Well, it doesn't matter, I will get stronger. When I become stronger, I will definitely be able to defeat them and become the Pirate King." 17 inches. "Okay, then I wish you good luck." "By the way, how are you doing with the 6-style cultivation manual I left for you a few years ago?" Air didn't think carefully about whether Luffy could become the Pirate King. Anyway, he was not interested in it. He only had thoughts about the King of the World. However, he suddenly remembered that before he left East Blue, he had given Luffy and Ace 6 forms of training methods, so he asked curiously, "R6 postures, I learned them." Ace trained me for a long time at that time, but because the manual said that only fools can use Iron Body, I only learned 5 postures. Snapped. Air slapped his face. He wrote this sentence as a joke at the time. Unexpectedly, Luffy and the others did not learn from it. "Well, I was negligent. Iron Body is actually very useful, especially since it can help you armament Haki more easily." Then Air explained to them what Haki was, but at this time Luffy scratched his head and suddenly stretched out his fist and wrapped it in a suit of military colors. "Is it this one, huh? You actually know how to use weapons? Who taught you?" Air asked in surprise. Although he knew that the plot had gone astray, it was a bit too far gone. "You must know that this is not the Grand Line, but the East Blue. As long as you master Haki here, you are basically invincible." Regarding Air's doubts, Luffy did not hide it and spoke it out openly. The rest of the people also listened curiously. "Well, just a year ago, Grandpa returned to Windmill Village and asked me if I wanted to become a marine. I said I wanted to be the Pirate King, but he beat me up again." Speaking of this, Luffy recalled Garp's fist again and couldn't help but tremble. "Obviously I am a rubber man, but every time Grandpa's fist hits someone, it hurts." I asked Grandpa, and Grandpa said it was the power of love, the iron fist of love that enveloped Haki. Then he said, "You have learned the 6 postures, I will give you the power of love, poor child." He was beaten out of Haki, after a few seconds of silence for him. Air spoke, "As long as you know it, I just want to tell you that Haki is a necessary ability to become a top powerhouse. Whether you want to become the Pirate King or the world's best swordsman, you must know Haki. Do you understand?" Luffy and Zora looked at each other and nodded, with an expression that said "I understand." "I understand. If I learn Haki, I will be the Pirate King, #1 in the world, that's it." Nami went up and punched each of them, driving them both into the ground. Usopp next to him was so frightened that his face turned pale. "Idiot, That's not what I meant at all. Looking at the two people with bulging heads and tongues sticking out, looked at Nami strangely and said, Nami, I think you have a talent for learning armament Haki. Is that so? Can I learn it too? Nami retracted her fist, looking at and asked happily. Glancing at the two people who were still lying dead, stretched out his thumb without hesitation and said affirmatively, believe me in 3.1, you will definitely be a Haki master in the future. Nami was a little embarrassed at being told that, and stuck out her tongue cutely. Gutilda. Just then stomach growled. Seeing this, Ru smiled and held his arm, and said, you must be starving after not eating for 5 days. Go get something to eat first, and we'll chat while we eat. When Luffy heard about eating, he immediately jumped up from the ground, and urged with full energy, eat, eat. My stomach is so hungry. Idiot. Haven't you been eating? Nami complained, but he still followed suit, and everyone laughed and held another lively banquet. Chapter 128 Nami's Sweetheart. The chefs on the Conqueror tried their best for this banquet and strived to be the best. The chefs at Bharati restaurant wanted to help but were rejected by them. They had no choice but to attend the banquet together and taste the delicious food as guests. During the dinner, everyone asked many questions while eating. Luffy, swallow your food and then talk. Usopp, hey, weren't you the Marine Vice Admiral? Why didn't you do it? There is no way. The senior government officials don't like me and will kick me out. Nami, this spaceship is so luxurious. Is the gold on the ceiling? That's right. The entire ship has been transformed, and now most parts are wrapped in gold. Zora, oh then this ship must be worth a lot of money, right? And it's also a flying ship. Well, it's probably worth tens of billions of Baileys. Puff. Sanji, who was drinking juice, was so shocked that the juice in his mouth spurted out when he heard the number tens of billions. Fortunately, even if he turned his head, the juice did not spray on the food. But Zora, who was sitting next to him, suffered a disaster and was directly doused with fruit. He stood up angrily, pointed at Sanji and shouted, Arsehole, what are you doing, you perverted cook? I'm sorry. Huh? Who are you calling the perverted cook? You idiot wearing a belly band. Sanji originally wanted to apologize, but when he heard his name, he stood up angrily. The two raised their heads and looked at each other fiercely. What are you talking about, you curly-browed bastard? Want to fight? Your green algae head. These two people are indeed natural enemies, and they actually started fighting like this while talking. Everyone didn't care and allowed them to mess around. Nami's eyes sparkled with Bailey's light. Even though had helped her kill Arlong so many years in advance, her love for money still hadn't changed. After she heard that the ship was worth tens of billions, she quickly got up and came to and said excitedly, do you still need a wife? How about me? As long as you give me this ship, I can consider marrying you. Puff. This time everyone squirted and looked at her with disbelief. Luffy beat his chest and tried his best to swallow the meat in his mouth, jumped up on the table, pointed at Nami and shouted, Hey, Nami, you are my partner. How can you marry Garrett and Hancock couldn't stand it any longer. They slapped the table and stood up and shouted angrily, Bad girl, what are you talking about? Don't you take us seriously? Nami scratched his head in embarrassment, realizing that he had been carried away by Bailey, so he stuck out his tongue in embarrassment and apologized quickly. Sorry, I was joking. It turned out to be a joke. Luffy breathed a sigh of relief, regained his smile and started eating and drinking. Cut. The two women sat back down unhappily and stopped pursuing the matter. Looked at her with a smile, and said playfully, I don't care. But you should have someone who cares. Hey, what are you talking about? How is it possible? There is no such thing. Hearing words, Nami was stunned at first, and then quickly denied it, but her face turned slightly red and she glanced at Luffy who was eating haphazardly. Explain. This is not a gift for a girl. The protagonist has no feelings for Nami, but now it is different from the original work. Nami has known Luffy early, and she is no longer bound by Arlong. Nami has often followed merchant ships to Windmill Village to find Luffy over the years, and even his grandfather Garp has met him. The two have been together for a long time, and Luffy does have a unique charm, so it's not surprising that Nami has a crush on him. Had just heard Luffy talk about their experiences in the past few years, and Nami always did some intimate things like interrupting Luffy intentionally or unintentionally, so it was strange that he didn't doubt it. Not only but also some people like Ru and Zeppu also saw it, but they didn't say it clearly. But I have to say that the Straw Hats are also weird. Usopp, Zora and other people who get along day and night didn't notice it at all. Usopp even thought was joking now, and was still laughing heartlessly. Zora was still fighting with Sanji vigorously, and the two of them didn't hear the conversation at all. As for Luffy, felt that if Nami didn't take the initiative, he would never notice it in his life. Smiled, said nothing, and started eating hungrily. After all, if he doesn't eat, Luffy's stomach will be filled with all the delicacies. A few hours later, the group finally stopped holding their chubby bellies. Most people had been sent to their rooms because they had drank a lot. Yamato also carried the sleepy Fanny, Garrett, and hank-up back to their beauty sleep. At this time, there are only a few people left here, including Ru, the Straw Hats, Sanji, and Zeppu. Rubbing his full belly comfortably, looked at Luffy, who had stretched into a ball, and asked, "Luffy, what are you going to do next when you call 613? Are you going directly to the Grand Line?" Hearing this question, Luffy tilted his head and thought about it, nodded and said, The chef has been hired, and we can set off for the Grand Line. Hey, I was included in the target, but I didn't agree to it." Sanji, who was sitting next to him and lighting up a cigarette, said this, and he knew that this bastard had included him again without permission. Hearing that Sanji rejected him again, Luffy lay on the table in disappointment. "Hey, why don't you join us? It's so fun to be a pirate." "That's just what you think," Sanji complained. Zeppu, who had been listening to their conversation, suddenly spoke. "Sanji, follow them. I'm serious this time." Sanji looked at Zeppu and wanted to refuse like before. But I heard Zeppu continue. "Do you still remember our dream? Blue, the legendary dreamy sea that gathers all the seafood ingredients from all over the world, cannot be found by living in a small East Blue. Follow them and leave. In order to realize your dream, and also to help me realize mine, go to sea and go to the Grand Line. I believe you can find it one day." Chapter 129, Traveling with the Straw Hats. Boss Zeppu. Sanji looked at the man who had taken care of him since childhood and was like a father to him, and the corners of his eyes gradually became moist. However, he suppressed the tears that were about to burst out and pretended not to care and said, "You don't need to tell me. I will go, not for you, just for my own dream. HMPH, it's up to you, you duplicitous brat." Zeppu looked at Sanji, who was holding on, and said with a smile, "Yo-ho, I found my chef partner. Finally, I don't have to eat Nami's black-hearted food anymore. Long live it." Luffy and Usopp held hands and danced happily. Nami and Zora also smiled. Ru even happily sent blessings to Sanji. After celebrating happily for a while, said to Luffy, "Congratulations, you have another partner. But I still want to say one more thing. There is a very famous town in East Blue. Are you really not going to visit it?" Luffy, who was chatting with Sanji, turned to look at him curiously and asked doubtfully, Are there a lot of delicious food there?" "That's not true." After saying this, Luffy immediately lost interest, but Air's next words cheered him up again. "But that's where Roger, the Pirate King, was executed and where he was born. Don't you want to go and see it?" "Pirate King Roger? I have to go." "Nami, do you know that place?" Luffy's eyes were filled with stars and he quickly asked Nami, who was standing aside. "Well, I know, it's Logue Town, right? Its other name is the Town of Beginnings and Ends. The execution platform of Roger the Pirate King is still there." Execution platform. Luffy became even more excited after hearing this. He jumped on the table and shouted to everyone in the Straw Hats, "Yoshi, kids, I have decided to visit the execution platform before heading to the Grand Line." Several members of the Straw Hats responded in unison, supporting the captain's decision. Seeing that they had also decided to go to Logue Town, Air also said with a smile, "Then come with us." "My goal is also Logue Town. There is an old friend of mine there. I just want to meet him." Hee, that's great. I haven't had enough fun yet. This ship is so awesome. There are so many things I haven't seen before," Luffy said happily. Luffy and the others liked this magical spaceship that was so big that it was exaggeratedly large and had many novelties inside. They wanted to live here until they got tired of playing with it. "Haha. Just play whatever you want. I also have a top-notch artificial hot spring and massage here. I just want to relax after dinner." Air greeted everyone to get up and walk towards the hot spring on the 3rd floor. The next day, after saying goodbye to everyone in the restaurant on the sea, the group set off for Logue Town. When leaving, Sanji was still moved by Zeppu's simple words, "Don't catch a cold." Crying bitterly, Ru also expressed his gratitude to Zeppu for taking care of his brother for so many years. Before leaving, Hawkeye also woke up. After thanking Air, he decided to stay in Baratie for the time being to recover from his injuries. "We will return to the Grand Line after a few minutes when the injury is better." Air didn't try to stay, but gave him a phone call and said goodbye to him directly. On the Conqueror, Fanny pestered Luffy and insisted that he turn into a big balloon to play with her. Luffy was also at a loss when facing a child and had no way to deal with her. Not far away, Usopp, who was playing Gwent with Sanji, couldn't help laughing when he saw Luffy, who turned into a balloon and let Fanny jump on it. "Ha ha ha. I didn't expect that Luffy would be unable to do anything to others. It's really a relief." At that moment, Sanji, who was sitting opposite him, pulled out a card with Vivi's portrait on it, played it, and said, "Don't be too happy, Usopp. I've already won." Queen Vivi can summon the kingdom's patron saints, Bell and Jaka. Together, my points are already higher than yours. Nani. Usopp quickly looked at the card table and found that Sanji's points were indeed slightly more than his own, and he had already lost. "Ah damn it, I almost won." "Haha, if you lose, you lose. Don't try to cheat." Sanji happily took out a pen and started drawing on the reluctant Usopp's face. At this time, both of their faces were covered with various patterns, which looked very funny. What they were playing was a modified version of One Piece World created by Air, which imitated Gwent from a certain Witch's Pile Driver game in her previous life. This novel card game has been on sale in Alabaster for some time. Not long after it came out, Gwent's unique gameplay attracted countless people. Nowadays, China is preparing for a formal competition of Gwent. The winner can get the super rare air card, which is a brand that is enough to make all card players crazy. For this reason, a large number of citizens have signed up to participate, which has once again increased the popularity of Gwent, and now it has become the most famous board game in the country. Air is planning to find an opportunity to promote this game to the world, and then make a good profit by selling card packs. Zora, who was sitting on another chair watching their card game, saw this and mocked unhappily. Yaoshou, do you know how to play? Didn't you say that you have never lost at cards? Why can't you even win this idiot's eyebrow curling game? Hearing Zora's taunt, Sanji immediately couldn't help it anymore and shouted back, what are you talking about, bastard green algae head? Do you want to fight? Yaoshou wasn't happy either, so he stood up and gave his seat to Zora, saying that you can go ahead. Zora did not show weakness, wang zhao, and started fighting with Sanji at the card table without hesitation. Yaoshou was on the sidelines, fanning the flames, pointing fingers at the two, and acting as a dog-headed strategist. Nami, who was playing with Fanny, took the little cutie into his arms, looked at the noisy three people over there unhappily, and complained, really, no matter where they are, these people always like to be noisy. Can't they be quieter? Well, I still play with balloons. Fanny waved her short hands and kept struggling in Nami's arms, trying to continue playing with human-shaped balloons. Nami glanced at Luffy, who looked hopeless, hugged Fanny and coaxed, little Fanny, let brother Luffy go. How about my sister taking you to play in the swimming pool? There are also big balloons there. Fanny tilted her head and thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. You're so good, let's go swimming. Chapter 130. Logue Town. Air and Yamato, who were lying on the beach chairs basking in the sun like salted fish, looked at Fanny being taken away and breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. It feels so good not to have to take care of children. Air sighed. Yamato nodded in agreement and said, ever since Fanny was able to go to the ground, I spent most of the time following her behind, without any rest time at all. Recalling that painful time, Yin silently shed tears called sadness in his heart. I think back then, she finally escaped from her father's clutches and went to sea, but she didn't even see the vast sea because this little girl was forced to become a full-time mother. Because Yamato himself has never experienced the relationship between father and mother since he was a child. So she wanted to give her children a different childhood so that Fanny could grow up happily. So she began to care about all aspects of Fanny and worked hard to learn all kinds of knowledge about taking care of children. From the very beginning of breastfeeding, changing diapers, and putting her to sleep, to later teaching her to speak and read, she did it herself without letting the servants interfere. Although sometimes too strict, for Air, Yamato is a very qualified mother. Air turned to look at Ru, who was also sitting beside him, and asked, where are Hancock and Garrett? Why don't they come out and relax together? Ru 997 thought for a moment and said, they seem to be checking some information. As she said that, she looked in the direction of Fanny and teased Air, Sister Hancock and Garrett really want a baby. You have to keep working hard. Air helplessly spread his hands and said, whether I can have children or not is not up to me. Look, Ain and Nasha, who were the first to follow me, don't have either. What can I do about this? That's why they look for information. Since you can't be relied on, you can only work hard on your own. What do you mean I'm unreliable? Don't say such misleading words. After complaining, Air asked again, why don't you go and talk to Sanji more? You should have a lot to say, right? There's nothing to talk about. I've said everything that needs to be said. How far my brother can achieve next has nothing to do with me as a sister. Ru looked at Sanji, who was playing with Zora and Yaoshou, looked at his heartfelt smile, and said with a smile, ha, what a good sister. It's that boy's luck to have a sister like you. Sebe, Humphrey, don't think that I will let you go if you praise me. I also really want a baby. The happy time is always short-lived. After 3 days of slow sailing, Air and his party finally arrived at the destination of this trip, Logue Town. Taking control of the Millie, Air, Hancock, the girls, and the Straw Hats descended from the sky and arrived at the dock of Logue Town. Ignoring the shocked looks of countless passers-by on the pier, Air said to Luffy and others, then let's separate here first. I have to go find my old friends. Ah, I also want to see the execution platform soon. Goodbye, Luffy said as he stretched out his arms, grabbed the bulge on the roof and flew out like a cannonball. Hey, Luffy. Nami stretched out her hand to call him, but in the blink of an eye, the other person's figure had disappeared. Looking at Luffy walking away, Air looked at the Straw Hats with distress, because they said pitifully, it's really difficult for you to have such a captain. Several people who heard this sighed at the same time. Even Sanji, who had just boarded the ship, knew that Luffy was unreliable after getting to know him in the previous few days. But they had already boarded the ship, and they had no choice but to accept this inconsistent captain. Nami watched Air wave goodbye to him. Goodbye, Air, see you at the Grand Line later, she said, and quickly got off the boat and chased in the direction where Luffy left. Zora and Yaoshou also said goodbye to Air and his party, and each went to the town. When it was Sanji's turn, He looked at Rue and opened his mouth to say something, but couldn't. After seeing this, Rue thought for a while, then took his arm and said to Air and the others, "Sure enough, I still don't worry about this stupid brother. You geese should go your own way. I'll go to town with him for a walk." After saying that, she took Sanji and left. "Humphrey, I looked like I didn't care before. But now when we really want to separate, I'm reluctant to let go." "What a duplicitous guy." Hancock hugged his chest and snorted coldly. "I can't help it. This is family. If you have a sister, you should understand." Garrett looked at the backs of the two of them and thought of her brothers and sisters and the happy times she had with them. Thinking of his two younger sisters, Hancock stopped talking. Yamato didn't know what it felt like to have no siblings, but she hugged Fanny tightly in her arms, and now she was not alone. Looking at the three people who were lost in their memories, Air interrupted with a puzzled expression. "Okay, it's not like we can't see each other, so let's set off quickly." "Idiot, why do you interrupt me every time when someone is moved?" "That's right, I'm still thinking about the happy memories with Fanny." "I found out, Air, that you don't understand a woman's heart at all." The three girls all complained, and even Fanny followed suit and said, "Daddy is an idiot." After taking Fanny from Yamato's arms, Air rubbed her little face and said helplessly, "Okay, I apologize, let's go quickly. Haven't you noticed that everyone here is staring at us?" Garrett snorted and complained, "Most of them are staring at you and Sister Hancock. After all, one is a big celebrity who often appears in newspapers, and the other is a super beautiful beauty." Hancock raised his head proudly, very proud of his charm. Air also scratched his head, wondering if he would have to change his image in the future. At this time, Fanny suddenly pointed to the small shop with toys in the distance and shouted, "Mom, look, there are toys over there." Air looked back and said in surprise, "No, your eyes are too good. It's at least a few hundred meters away, and there are messy things blocking the way. How can you still see the toy store?" "Humphrey, Fanny is my daughter, of course she is very powerful, right little Fanny?" Yamato snatched Fanny lovingly, hugged her and walked while saying, "Tilda." Chapter 131. Old Friend Smoker. Air looked at them leaving and shouted quickly, "Hey, aren't you with me?" Yamato thought of something and said to Fanny, "Ah, little Fanny, say goodbye to Daddy quickly." "Bye-bye, Dad." After saying that, the two of them didn't even look back and waved casually, even if they said hello. "You can take your time and do things alone. I'm also going to accompany little Fanny," Garrett said to Air and followed her. "Hey, why are you leaving?" Air looked at her back and shouted, but Garrett didn't pay him any attention. Helpless, Air had no choice but to look at Hancock, but when she turned around, she was gone. "Hey, little Fanny, try this marshmallow, is it delicious?" "I'm so sweet, thank you, Mum." "Yeah, kawaii." Tilda. Looking at Hancock, who had already run to the front at some point, Air sighed helplessly and walked towards the town alone. Not long after Air appeared in the port, the marine base here received the news, and then immediately reported the information to the top officer here, who was Air's old friend, Smoker. Colonel Smoker. With a hurried sound, the door was pushed open violently, and Ueda Voss rushed in like a storm. As soon as she came in, she was choked by the smoke in the room and coughed repeatedly. Smoker, who was sitting behind his desk, raised his head from the document, stood up, went to the window, opened it for some air, and then said calmly, "Why are you panicking? Don't yell over the smallest things." After saying that, Smoker sat down on the office chair, crossed his legs and asked, "Tell me, what happened?" "The smoke in the office has almost cleared, and Tashigai has recovered from his cough." Hearing Smoker's calm tone, she calmed down a little and opened her mouth to report. Colonel Smoker, a Marine, reported that the former Marine Vice Admiral Fire Dragon Air was found at the port. This time it was Smoker's turn to cough. He almost choked to death when he heard Tashigai's words while holding a cigar in his mouth. "Ahem, who are you talking about?" "That bastard Air." Smoker jumped up and roared loudly at Waschi. Tashigai was shocked. After following him for so long, this was the first time she saw Smoker react so big. She quickly stood at attention and said, "Kaido." "Yes, Colonel Smoker." "It is confirmed that it is the Fire Dragon Air." Smoker bit the cigar in his mouth tightly, and white mist involuntarily escaped from his body. He murmured, "That bastard. Why did he come to Logue Town?" At this time, a voice very familiar to Smoker sounded outside the door. "Why, can't I come and see my old friend?" Then Air walked in from the door in a swaggering manner. Seeing Air, both of them were shocked. Smoker directly put his hand on Ten behind his back and asked, "How did you get in here, you bastard?" Tashigai looked at him in disbelief and shouted excitedly, "Fire Dragon Air." "It's me." Air smiled and walked to the sofa to sit down and spread his hands. "I just walked in like this. Your sailors were very friendly and showed me the way." After saying that, he asked Tashigai again, "You look very excited, unlike your boss who even drew his weapon when facing an old friend." Hearing his sinister words, Smoker let out a sigh, let go of his hands, and came to sit in front of Air. Tashigai's eyes were sparkling. He looked at him with admiration, and he quickly said, "You defeated Mihawk 3 days ago and became the new world's greatest swordsman. You are my idol as a swordsman." Air raised his eyebrows funny at Smoker, whose face had darkened. Air said with a smile, "Well, Then do you want me to sign your autograph? Hey, is it okay? Tashigi exclaimed and asked in disbelief. Seeing Air nod, she quickly took out a notebook and pen from her body and handed them to Air respectfully. Air skillfully wrote on it, Neferutari D. Air, given to the future great swordsman. What's your name? He asked knowingly. Tashigi. My name is Tashigi. Air wrote her name on it and returned it to her with a smile. After Tashigi took it, he excitedly hugged the small book into his arms. He still can't believe that happiness came so suddenly. Please give me flowers. Smoker couldn't bear it any longer, and said with a gloomy face, Tashigi, have you done your practice today? Tashigi didn't know why the colonel suddenly asked this, but she still answered honestly, not yet. Then do it for me quickly, 5 times as much as yesterday. Smoker yelled, scaring Tashigi so much that he turned and ran away. Air watched Tashigi leave and said to Smoker angrily, hey, that's not it. This is my lovely fan. Asshole, Tashigi is my subordinate, it's my business to discipline him. After yelling, Smoker took a long puff of cigar to relieve his discomfort before asking, Zero. What are you doing here as a big shot? Don't talk about idiotic things like meeting old friends. I won't believe it. Really, we haven't seen each other for 4 or 5 years. It's rare to come to East Blue. Don't you want to come and see you? After joking, Air became serious and said, Smoker, you won't have a future in Marine. Come and work with me. The Grand Line and even the New World should be the place where you can show off your skills. What? Are you here to recruit me? I heard that you poached a lot of talents from Marine. Are you planning on me now? I'm sorry, I'm not interested in being your subordinate. I still prefer to be a peaceful Marine. Air sneered and mocked mercilessly. Unfen? If you were Unfen, you wouldn't still be a little colonel now. Smoker leaned on the sofa, not caring about his taunts, and said calmly, get out of here when you're done. You're not welcome here. Air spread his hands and said, don't welcome me? You are really arrogant. Don't forget that I am a celestial dragons. Not to mention you, a little colonel. Even the admiral would not dare to say such words to me. Smoker frowned and stood up. It's up to you, as long as you don't disturb me from my official duties. Chapter 132. Who is the most beautiful woman in the world? Seeing that Smoker didn't say anything to drive him away, Air said with a smile, haha, even a guy like you would be afraid of power? It seems that the status of celestial dragons is really useful. Smoker sat back in his office chair and began to look at the files, not wanting to pay attention to him at all. Seeing this, Air had no choice but to shrug and stand up. Okay, you can think about it again. I'll wait for your reply. With that, Air turned around and planned to leave. However, when he walked to the door, he spoke again. Think about the slaves enslaved by the celestial dragons and nobles. Marine will not save them. No matter how hard you believe that the common people who are oppressed by the high amount of heavenly gold and the cruel king, they can't wait for Marine's help. After saying these last words, he left directly. 807. Smoker didn't respond. He waited until I walked away. Then he clenched his hands holding the document, crumpled the document into a ball, and threw it to the ground. Bastards. Air is, and so is the government. They are a bunch of infuriating bastards. On the street, Luffy was scolded by Nami, and then he honestly started walking to the execution platform. But the first time he came here, he got lost as expected. After asking several passers-by and even sitting in a bar where the Pirate King had been, he finally came to the square where the execution platform was. Oh tilde, is that the execution platform? Exclamation mark. Luffy shouted excitedly as he looked at the execution platform. After saying that, he stretched out his arms, grabbed the execution platform and flew up. Standing on top of the execution platform and looking into the distance, it must be 22 years ago, the Pirate King was executed here. At this time, people near the square also noticed him, and a policeman ran over quickly, holding a loudspeaker and shouting, "Hey, boy above, get down quickly." Luffy looked down at him and asked curiously, "Why?" "That's a special execution platform under the jurisdiction of the world government." "Come down here." "Don't say such unreasonable things, Mr. Policeman." The policeman was so angry that he put down his loudspeaker and wanted to arrest him. But at this time, a beautiful woman holding a mace knocked him unconscious with a blow. "I finally found you, Luffy. Long time no see." The beauty put the mace on her shoulder, raised her head and said to Luffy, I don't know a beauty like you, right?" Luffy looked at her doubtfully and said, "This is the only beauty Luffy admits personally." Many people in the square were bewildered by Alvida's beauty, and their eyes were filled with love. So beautiful, what a stunning beauty. Alvida couldn't help but curl up her lips when she heard the compliments from people around her. "Don't you recognize me?" In that case, she suddenly increased her volume and shouted to the people around her, "Let me ask you, what is the most beautiful thing in the sky and sea?" Regardless of whether men or women heard this question, they all answered in unison, "It's you, beautiful lady." Alvida opened her hands and said with a smile, "Yes, it's me. There is no man in this world who is not impressed by my beauty." Listening to this familiar line, Luffy always felt like he heard it somewhere. Just when he was scratching his head and thinking hard, and almost remembered, 10 pleasant voices interrupted him. I can't pretend you didn't hear this. In terms of beauty, I am the most beautiful woman in the world. The people heard the sound and looked back quickly. I saw Hancock walking towards this side with long legs, swaying through the passage that everyone gave way to, and came to Alvida. So beautiful. She is even more beautiful than that lady. A true beauty. When the public saw Hancock, they were immediately attracted by her. They were fascinated by Alvida just now and immediately changed the target of their praise. You guy. Alvida bit her lower lip jealously as she looked at Hancock, who was on a higher level than her in terms of figure, appearance, temperament and demeanor. Yamato held Fanny, and Garrett walked through the crowd holding a few shopping bags. Garrett looked at Alvida and said, although you are also very beautiful, compared with Sister Hancock, you are still far behind. Yamato, Fanny, mother and daughter nodded in agreement. Seeing two more beauties arriving, even though one of them was holding a child, the people still cheered happily. Being able to see so many beauties in one day means that my life has not been in vain. Luffy saw them, greeted them with a smile, and then sat down cross-legged to watch the show. Alvida heard Luffy say hello to them, and when she looked at the three beautiful girls in front of her, her teeth tightened even more. Damn it, not only are they as good-looking as me, but they also know the man I like. Where did they come from? Looking at the woman gnashing her teeth in front of her, Hancock smiled slightly. She lifted her hair and came closer to Alvida, lifting her chin with her fingers. Although you are also beautiful, unfortunately, I am the most beautiful woman on this sea. Alvida looked at 2.2's beautiful face and delicate facial features so close at hand, and felt the smooth fingers lifting her chin. Her eyes involuntarily showed love. Are so beautiful. You are the most beautiful woman in the world. After hearing her words, Hancock showed such an expression, moved his hand, put it on his chest, and said, yes, this piece of sea is the most beautiful. Oh, the most beautiful woman in the world. Passers-by shouted crazily. Just when everyone in the square was attracted by several beauties, a group of sneaky guys in black robes came behind them.